So the opening line of the book of Yoga is a very rich line, and perhaps one can keep on talking about it for days and days, and yet one may not arrive at the deep sense of fate which had prompted Narad to come from paradise to Ashupati's Mathura. Let us anyway read a few connected lines before we can really make any beginning. Fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Man's hopes and longings build the journeying wheels that bear the body of destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form are already born in him. His parentage is in his secret soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his previous choice. Nature and fate compel man's previous choice. But greater spirits this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. The entire psychological condition of meeting the challenge of fate is described very succinctly in these few lines. Man's fate within him shapes his acts and rules. Man's hopes and longings build the journeying wheels. According to the Mahabharata, fate is an all-powerful agency. It is fate which will make man do what he must do. He is bound to his fate. Yet, it also asserts that fate cannot operate, cannot be effective, cannot carry out the intended purpose unless there is a participation of man in it. Man has to be an instrument of fate. Fate is ineffective if he does not come forward. Now, this is a deep metaphysical issue, whether it is fate which governs man's actions or it is due to man's action that fate operates and does what must be done. There can be endless discussion about it, but let us see a few possibilities. See, what is fate? The word fate has a Latin origin. Fatum utterance. fatum utterance. That is the decree of fate. What is spoken by fate, it is that which must happen. So, fate becomes really powerful there. According to the Greek mythology, even the gods are subject to the rules of fate. Ananki, necessity, they must obey her, even the gods. They don't have absolute free will. They are the instruments of what is destined, and they must operate to carry out what is intended by Ananki, by necessity, by fate. Of course, we say fate in various contexts as karma, my fate, my karma, as we say, or we say kismat. Well, this is what is to happen, it has happened. We say chance, by coincidence, by unknown circumstances, things have happened, and therefore we call it fate. We say it is luck. We say it is destiny. We also say it is doom. All these are variations with different shades of meaning. In the Indian tradition, Indian metaphysics, Indian concept of the working of secret powers of nature and gods and the occult forces, we have Bhagya, fortune, we have Niyati, ordained rule, we have Purushakar, what man must do, that is Purushakar. We have Daiva, what is determined by God, by providential forces, Daiva. We have Prarabdha, things which have to happen irrespective of our actions. We have karma, all these are interrelated. Bhagya Yoga, that is a common phrase we use. The yoga of fortune, the arrival of various forces at a given point to mold a given event, or lucky juncture, that is Bhagya Yoga, we see. In fact, according to the Indian tradition, the life of man is divided into 4 parts: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Now all these things have their own fortunes, destinies, their own role to play in life. In the Greek mythology, there are 3 goddesses: Clotho, Lachesis, Atrobos, conveying birth, life, death. We are all ruled by these, and there is hardly anything we can do in this regard. The dictionary defines fate as inevitable destiny or necessity. Now, It is that inevitable destiny which had driven Savitri in the early course of her life, before she had started her yoga. Even her meeting with Satyavan was a kind of chance meeting, in the sense that she was going from place to place, from town to town, from country to country, in search of a life partner. She found none suitable to her. Eventually, as she was traversing through the Shelva woods, she saw at a distance a figure of a youth, bright, shining, lustrous, and she would have just kind of ignored him and moved on in a chariot. She would have missed the occasion. But God touched in time. That is what the poet says. But God touched in time. And the miracle was accomplished. She looks at this youth intently, deeply, carefully. And suddenly she has recognized in him one with whom she had been through lives. Yes, here it is. I have found him. So here also, although there is an age-old identity between Savitri and Satyavan, it is God who touched in time. It is chance which was capitalized that things must happen now. Fate worked in a kind of an absolute sense, and things were done. So that is how fate had accomplished her miracle of bringing the two lovers together, because it is through that the destiny of mankind, their own destiny of course, the destiny of mankind, the destiny of evolution, the destiny of the soul of earth is what is going to be fixed. So these are far-reaching implications. Now it is this road on which Savitri had met Satyavan. We could say that it is she who had foreseen this road. Destiny accomplished miracle of bringing them together, and because it is destiny who has brought them together, therefore it is an immutable road also. So fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Her foreseen immutable road could mean Savitri, who had already seen this road when she met Satyavan. It is that road which she is following now again. She is following once more that road, foreseeing at the time of meeting each other. So that is one way of looking at it. We are saying that the road was foreseen by Narad. We could also say that in the storyline, it is Savitri herself who has foreseen this road, and now she is taking it once more to go to the hermitage to live with Satyavan. But much more than that is the fixation of all these events in the life of the special ones in the transcendent. The soul of Satyavan is in the grip of death. If he has to be relieved, if the soul has to be released from death, Savitri must take birth, mortal birth. So that is already fixed there. She takes mortal birth. She must meet Satyavan. That is already fixed. So the destiny is already laid out in the transcendent, and it is now being kind of worked out in details on the human scene. The template is already prepared in the luminous heaven, and now it is that template is being worked out to produce the necessary details of operation on the human scale, in the human plane. So that is how fate followed her, foreseeing a beautiful road is linked up in all the directions. It could be Narad, it could be Savitri, it could be the transcendental will which has really done all those things. Yet, in order that the transcendental will operates here, human Savitri has to go through the whole process. Fate cannot be fulfilled without human action. That is what Mahabharata says. Fate cannot be fulfilled without human action. Savitri has to undergo through all the stages. That things do happen here according to what has been already fixed up. It could be in the occult, it could be in the spiritual, it could be in the transcendent, wherever. Human instrument is required for the action. And that is what Savitri, as human incarnate supreme, is undergoing in her life. She has already found love, which is because God touched in time on the human scale, at the human level. Otherwise, she would have simply ignored him and passed on, moved on. You see. After all, on the way, in the jungle, in the forest, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of places he was seeing, and there is no special reason that should give special attention to this youth, you see. Something happened, something opened in her soul, and the matter was over at once, you see. In the same way, Narad's coming was also, we might say, an act of supreme fate. But fate with the knowledge of things, of events. Narad has the knowledge of things which are moving in various directions. He has the deep sense of fate, and he has the knowledge of all the three divisions of time, the Kala Drishti, as we said, and therefore he must come. Now the question which arises is, Narad comes, of course, he tells in a very blunt manner that 1 year after the marriage, Satyavan is going to die. And things will happen as have been planned, so to say, by fate, with the human action of Savitri and all the associated people around her. But suppose, for the sake of argument, had Narad not come, would this knowledge of Satyavan's death be known, given to Savitri? Would she have known about his death at all? He said that she would not have known about his death. She would have simply died 1 year after the marriage. It is not that Narad is going to fix the death of Satyavan. He is destined to die 1 year after the marriage. But Savitri now would not have that knowledge that He is going to die 1 year after the marriage. In that position, in that condition, in that situation, Savitri would not have been ready to meet death. She would not have prepared herself yogically to take the challenge, to accept the challenge. It is only by doing yoga that the divine Shakti, the divine power entered into her soul, and it is that which came out when she was face to face with death. Now, this would not have happened if she did not have the knowledge in advance of Satyavan's death. So, in that sense, Narad's coming here is extremely crucial, is extremely significant, is loaded with deep occult sense that not only does he come and tell about this particular event, it is by that action she now gets ready to meet death. Yogically, she prepares herself for that particular purpose. As we have been saying, Narad has given her Diksha. Narad has indirectly initiated Savitri on the path of yoga. She is set now on the path of yoga. All these things might not have happened had Narad not come. And the present birth of Savitri would not have really achieved for which she had incarnated herself here. That would have also meant the incompleteness, in a certain sense, of Ashwapati's own yoga. She had invoked Divine Mother, she had compelled her to take her mortal birth. She is here now, and in the absence of this knowledge, she would not have been successful. So all these things are now again getting linked up with some kind of a divine fate which is tying all these things together. Ashwapati is coming here at the direct emanation of the Supreme. He is doing yoga tapasya for long 18 years. Ashwapati's birth, Savitri's birth, her meeting Satyavan, Naras making the announcement of the death, Savitri yogically preparing herself and eventually conquering death. These are all tied one in single action of fate. In fact, it would not be proper to say that it is fate, it is a divine logic. It is rhythm, truth in its dynamism, truth in the moment of time which is unfolding here. The power of truth, of rhythm, it is which is operating throughout. It prepares its own conditions, its own circumstances, its own individuals. And when one identifies one's will with the will of the Supreme, in which this truth dynamism moves, then there is a definite success. Ashwapati had identified his will with the will of the Supreme, with the will of the Divine Mother herself, and it demanded of her that she must take human birth. It happened. Savitri is also going to identify her will with the will of the Supreme and yet exercise her individual choice that this must happen. I want Satyavan not for myself. For myself, I don't need him because we have been always together. So there is no question of wanting him in that sense. I want Lord Satyavan for the soul of the earth. That is the will Savitri has exercised as an individual by identifying it with the will of the Supreme. And when these two wills meet, then it is in that truth dynamism that things unfold. Logos, the supreme dynamism, rhythm, it is that which then operates and brings the inevitability of its results. This is exactly what happened in the case of Savitri. So, when we say that fate followed her, forcing a beautiful route, it is the supreme logos, the truth consciousness force, the divine will in dynamic time. It is that which is operating and carrying out all these events in time here in the mortal world. In order that supreme will, rhythm, becomes effective here, human action is needed. The human action is provided by Ashwapati, he doing the yoga tapasya. Human action is provided by Savitri, by again doing yoga tapasya, identifying herself with the Divine Mother, embodying her force in her soul, and then things happen on a much smaller scale. It is that which happened in the Kurukshetra war. Arjuna. When Arjuna had identified his will with the will of Purushottama, then the action becomes successful. He had given up hope. He was in a mood of dejection. He had refused to fight. He did not want to pick up his bow and arrow and shoot the enemy. When that veil of ignorance was removed from his soul by the Divine Himself, then the human action became luminous, godly, to serve the purpose of Purushottama himself. Arjuna became victorious. In the same way, Savitri, of course, has become victorious on a much larger scale, on a universal scale, that it is for the sake of the soul of the earth that she is fighting. And she has accomplished that mission by carrying out her yoga. So it is that immutable road which she followed and reached the goal, reached the objective, had the full realization of the purpose for which she had incarnated herself here. That is what was accomplished by her most successfully. And it is that we should see in the book of yoga how she carried out the yoga in the course of time and became the instrument of the divine power on earth here. She always had the protection of Durga in every moment, in every circumstance of her life. But now a conscious will has awoken in her, and that conscious will of the individual, the conscious will of the Supreme, gives her the power of Durga, the protection of Durga, the victory of Durga. That is what Savitri achieves eventually. And we stop with that.